even if you're not, backbreaking labor, but we can get tired. We need to sometimes stop and take a rest in order to recover mentally, emotionally as well. I think that's really important too. You to use your brain and your children to use the labor for their children. Oh, yeah. Men and women both performing labor, the balance. Yes, it's really important to have that balance. It definitely is. Um, I think also we need to recognize that there's nothing wrong with just exclusively doing mental labor. Being an intellectual, being a scientist. My aunt is a scientist, and she got like so much criticism when she first became a scientist. They're like, "So when are you gonna get a real job?" And she was like, "What are you talking about?" Hola, ¿cómo estás? Hola, David, ¿cómo estás? Me alegra de verte. Thank you. I prefer that to work easier. Dímelo. Yes, it's better to work easier, not harder. Definitely, definitely. I'm looking at the YouTube thing. I'm just playing around and trying to see how it works because I've never been on the YouTube one, on the YouTube live. And I'm like moving things around all over the place. So I'm sorry if like I seem a little bit distracted. I just wanted to try it today while I'm doing the live with you guys too. Um just to see what it's like. It doesn't it The YouTube live doesn't seem yo no sé usar YouTube, pero yo me pongo a ver tu YouTube, really? Y tú debes de hacer una película. Oh, thank you. I try. Um, Doing all those videos is not easy because I look up so much information. Like I look up so much information. I sometimes overwhelm myself. I'm not gonna lie. It sometimes can be very, very overwhelming. I call them the generation of the stolen umbilical cord language. What? What? What does that mean? The stolen umbilical cord? Volcano, caso, volcano. Oh my gosh. But I really do enjoy. I'm trying to like see how this will work because I feel like I need more light. Hello, Norman. ¿Cómo está eso? Can you hear me? Can somebody go onto YouTube and see if people can hear me? Hi. I don't know if anybody can hear me because I can't. I don't know. Somebody go on YouTube. You can? Oh my god. Somebody's on YouTube and they said they can hear me. I'm excited because this is the first time that I'm doing the YouTube and the TikTok at the same time. So, oh, that's so cool. But yeah, like doing all the videos is just is a lot of work. Let them speak their mother tongue. Yeah, I think that's important too. To allow our kids to speak Spanish. Honestly because we lost all the other tongues that we had. I'm trying to see. Can I put this like full screen? Anybody know if I can put this like? So I'm looking at the YouTube on the desktop, and this is the first time I've ever done, and that's why I wanted to do it with you guys because I think that you can help me. um, how to? Can I put it full screen? It looks really small to me. I don't know. They're trying to silence our children because they allow their self to get silenced. Oh yes, they're trying to silence us for some reason. I honestly I don't understand where this whole Dominican obsession has come from because why? Why? Where has this come from? Anybody know? Anybody have an idea of where has come from? Because to me, it feels like sudden. I'm old. I know that a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're so young." I'm like, I'm not young, but I feel like this whole obsession with Dominicans and our identity is like a recent thing that just like blew up. I don't know. Because I didn't grow up hearing, like, especially like African Americans, I didn't hear them criticize us and be like, oh, you know, Dominicans are black and this and that. However, I do remember just assuming that we were all kind of like the same. I kind of made that assumption as I was growing up because I didn't know like the history, I didn't know the differences. But this whole obsession of of you guys have to be black and you have to accept your blackness and blah blah blah. That just seems like a more recent thing, and I'm not sure where it came from. I'm confused. Whoa. All my thingy fell down. I'm trying to see if I can get some lighting, some more lighting, because in the YouTube, it looks really dark. So I'm trying to see if I can get better lighting. They're doing that because they get friends who are not bold enough to tell them I'm brown. Maybe le tiene vergüenza la parte indígena dominicana. But you know, I feel like also a lot of people don't know about la parte indígena dominicana, because even like Latin Americans from Mexico, Guatemala, Salvador, it's like now is that they're learning that they're indigenous, and it's like that they didn't know. Even Mexicans, like a lot of them are learning that they're indigenous, and it's like, how did that? I don't know. I don't know how that was erased, but I mean, that's all part of the genocide. You know, paper genocide is real. I'm gonna turn this on. It's a little better. A little better. At least on the YouTube side. It seems a little better to me. But yeah, like paper genocide is very real. And I feel like a lot of people don't know about it because people don't talk about it as much. People just assume, or they just believe, right, that, oh, the Tainos and most of the indigenous were wiped out and this and that. And it's like, no. That's not exactly what happened. But they keep promoting it that way. I guess. Would that be the right way of saying it? They keep promoting it that way. Hi, Frey. It's really bringing our history to light. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm trying, because I'm trying to get like the actual sources for things, because I don't know if you noticed, there are other creators that also share. Hi, Nana. Hi, Nana. So nice to see you. There's other creators that share like stories and bits and things like that of Dominican history, but I noticed that a lot of them just repeat what other historians who were under Spanish influence, American influence say, and they don't really go back to the first instances of when these stories came out. So my focus has been to share the original. What does the original say? You know, not what Fulano said in the 1940s, 1930s, 1890s. You know, I'm not interested in that, you know. Sorry, just realized you guys are. Hey girl, Nana. A mí me costaron mucho por el orgullo marrón, ya. El marrón es una raza de indígenas. Why I say brown people fact. Yeah. Y el indígena es, it's interesting how people have such differing views about that. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I've run into people who feel very offended that people like us that are mixed want to like reconnect with that side of their ancestry. And I'm like, why? Like, why does that bother you? I love real history. I love real history too. So I try to stay away. Like today I was watching one creator, and they were talking about La Fundación de Santo Domingo and stuff like that. And the indigenous woman who they named La Casica, they used a name that was like invented by a historian. It's not in any of the cronistas. It's not like it's not nowhere in there. So and that makes me question sometimes. I'm like, so are you just reading for reading, or like are you really investigating what you're reading? Like, because people, okay, people love to say Google it, Google is free. Yeah, Google is free. However, however, Google is an input machine, meaning that it will show you the information inputted by other people. It doesn't mean it's correct. And that's what people don't understand about using Google. So Google will show you whatever somebody put into it. It doesn't show you what the correct information is. So that's why you have to be careful with just Googling it and letting Google just tell you. Like for example, look, when Gemini, which is the AI for Google, first came out, I put in Tainos. You know what it said to me? What Taino is? It said Taino, an unrecognized word, and that was it. I was like, okay, so apparently Gemini hasn't been inputted with the right information yet. And that's what people don't get about it. Can the same be said about ChatGPT? Yes, it can. Say you can say the same thing about it. ChatGPT is exactly the same as Gemini. It's an artificial intelligence. It will tell you whatever people have put into it. Okay, it doesn't tell you facts, it tells you data. So whatever people have put into it, that's what it's going to spew out. I like, I'm sorry, I just realized I didn't realize people were texting. I think of the unspoken comment they cause the, yeah, they made up histories and taught them that way. Yes, so that's something that, again, a lot of people don't realize about history in general. So in the 1800s was when all of a sudden there was like a revival about learning about history and things like that. So because there was no standard way of like fact checking anything, they made a lot of stuff up. And we still are getting like those stories that things that people just made up, and it's not true, but people keep repeating it. They keep repeating it, and they don't try to find the source to see if it's true or not. I like reading history because God shows me the great line I can picture so I connect with our roots. Yes, history is really important to connect with our roots. Google don't even have all the yes, maestro, that's so true. Google doesn't even have all the resources. Like most of the time, all you're getting is just blab, unfortunately. Like you could put it in now, and like you could put in Taino, and most of the time it will tell you that they're extinct. It's like, senora, that's not, hold up. The Taino still exists. Maybe the Dominican Taino doesn't exist anymore, but Taino still exists in other areas. So it's kind of like, what? No, we have to do proper research. That's what I've been saying to people. Yeah, yeah. A lot of things I know has been passed down to me by my grandmother, my ancestor, and yeah, and a lot of stuff that we have is passed down by our elders, and it's important to then pass it down to the next generation. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing too, because unfortunately, because my parents concentrated so much on working and working and working and working, they didn't take the time to teach me and my brother a lot of about our own history. And when you don't know about your own history, you feel lost. You feel lost. People just feel lost when they don't have enough information about their own history. That's just the truth of it. And that's why, like, I don't know if you guys notice, but Americans value so much their genealogy, knowing where they're from. That's really important to them. Why? because when you know where you're from, you have a sense of who you are. And then even when you look at like your family tree and the things people have accomplished, it gives you a sense of like, damn, I could do that too, you know. But when you have no idea of where your family comes from, it's kind of like you're in the sea and you're just floating around and kind of like, well, what am I doing here, you know. It causes a lot of disorientation, I feel. But something interesting too that I've noticed while doing my research is that, how can I say it? A lot of the original sources are out of print. So a lot of the stuff that we read in current studies, you can't like check because there's no, where do you get it? You know, where do you find it? So when I did my video, my recent video, I don't know if everybody has seen it, about Taino beads. And mind you, I've been investigating and learning about Taino culture for the past year or so, or maybe 2 years. And I had never ever paused to think about the beads. Why? I don't know. Like I don't think that I even included the beadwork in episode 5, which talked about their culture, their history, their artwork and everything. I didn't include it in there because I didn't think, like, I didn't stop to think about it. You know, I didn't start to stop to analyze that part. But if you think about it, look, this is why the beadwork is so amazing. To just make a couple of beads, it took weeks. So imagine making a cap, like what I showed in the video, a cap, a belt set. And I didn't show like the image that we have of how this would have been worn. Like we have a, like, it's like this big. We have a statue that shows like how the set would have been worn. It's like 11,000 beads. 11,000 beads. And it took a couple of weeks to do a couple of beads. So imagine 11,000 beads. How long would that have taken? That would have taken a really, really long time. The bead inside of the maraca, I mean, yes. So they had a whole. So look, the bead making was so important to them that they had a manufacturing site in Cuba, right? They had several. Cuba was one of them. And these people would literally go in their canoes from La Española, from Quisqueya, from Boriquen, and go to this manufacturing site of these beads because it was so important to them. And they would take the time to get that raw material and go through the process of making these beads because they had to. So they did it from the shells, two different kinds of shells, a white and a red shell. And then they had to like literally take each shell, form it, grind it, polish it, and make sure that it fit into what they wanted or what they needed. You know how many they probably broke like to get what they wanted? Like it's an extremely long process. And then to finally string these together with cotton. So the Tainos were master cotton processors. So they would make furniture, they made adamacas, they made naguas, but it was intricately done. Like it's not like how we do today that, okay, you know, this is a machine. Machine does this, right? They would literally form the fabric. Almost like crochet. Like kind of think of it in that way, like as if it were crochet, but by hand. You know? And then to string the beads. So they would string the beads in a way that if one bead broke, the other beads didn't break. You know how there's those, I don't have a bracelet, but you know how we have those bracelets that are like stretchy and you pop one, the whole thing is done? They developed a way of doing this without that happening. So if one bead popped off, it didn't matter. It would still stay intact. It's crazy. The process of appreciation. Yep. It's called in weaving. Yeah, it's like it was a weaving technique, but we don't even know how that weaving technique was done anymore. We completely lost the technology. It's funny you brought up genealogy. I did a 23andMe back in June of last year, and Brazil popped up as an ancestral region for South America. Could that have anything to do with Portugal influence in DR? So no. So what that is proof of is the kidnapping. So in the time that the Spanish were colonizing, they started not necessarily to kill off, because the Tainos also unalive themselves in protest for the Spanish presence. But the point being that the population went down. But in order for you to have a thriving economic colony, you need people. You need people, and you need those people to work and to mine gold. So their solution was that once they realized that tierra firme, which was what the name that they gave to Central America, existed, and also the part of Venezuela, what is Brazil, all these other regions existed, they started kidnapping people. And you are evidence of that. So someone on YouTube asked that question. They said, it's funny you brought up genealogy. I did a 23andMe back in June of last year, and Brazil popped up as an ancestral region for South America. Could that have anything to do with the Portuguese influence in DR? So I'm explaining that, and it doesn't have to do with the Portuguese. It has to do with the Spanish kidnapping people, kidnapping people, because the population was going down so rapidly in the islands that they needed people. So my mother, for example, she comes out with two other regions, so Dominican indigenous and Puerto Rico indigenous and South American indigenous. And it's all proof of how they were kidnapping and taking people from different islands. Yeah. So if your 23andMe comes out like that, like there's this one girl that I was talking about last week, no, the week before, and she shared that she comes out with 30% indigenous, but it's not just 30% indigenous DR. Like you can see that there's Quechua, there's other indigenous people in there, and that's the reason why. So if you come out with other indigenous roots in your DNA, you are proof of the kidnapping. And mind you, they tried to deny it for a very, very long time that they were kidnapping people. Why? I don't know. Like you're doing it. Like we have documentation that you're doing it. Like why are you denying it? It was it's weird because they literally wrote down that they were taking people. So why are you denying it? If it's documented, they made no sense. They made no sense. I wouldn't think that coming out with other indigenous roots from the beginning. I think it's from the migration building of tribes and nations before we got colonized. The thing is that the DNA is only 500 years ago. That's the max. So we know that it was during colonization. Unfortunately, when you do the DNA test, it doesn't go back further than 500 years. That's the furthest it goes back. And from our point in time, 500 years back is the 1400s. So it was definitely during colonization. Yeah. So as much as we want to kind of explain it in other ways, it just, thank you for the follow. Who was that? Lovely soul. Thank you so much. They were taken from They were taking them from where? So they were taking them from what they call tierra firme. So tierra firme, we know now as Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, all of Central America. But they were also taking them from South America. On Colon's third trip, if I'm not mistaken, he hit what now we know as like the curve of South America. So Brazil, lo que Venezuela, he hit those regions. So they realized, wait a minute, this is like another, it's not an island, it's tierra firme, which is what they called it for a very long time until it started being divided into countries. Also, don't forget other groups travel the Caribbean, moving north and south. Right. So other groups did move north and south. The problem with that is that because the DNA only goes back 500 years, we know that the movement was during colonization. And we also know that part of that movement was also them running. So we know we have a great example through Atue. So Atue was un cacique. He was a Dominican or un cacique de Quisqueya or Bohío, and he escaped La Tarde Roja in Jaragua, and he went to Cuba. So we know that that was something that the indigenous people did as well during the conquest, is that they themselves ran off to different areas. What we do know as well is that the indigenous people from Tierra Firme or from Central America, they realized that the Spanish were coming from the Caribbean Sea. So they actually ran the other way. So they started running down towards Central America, down towards South America, and going up towards North America. They weren't going into the ocean because that's where the Spanish were coming from. They were not going to go in that direction. And we know that through the different documents that describes like they're running away. The Spanish documented, really, really, really well how the indigenous people moved because they wanted to control the population. So, like for example, in Quisqueya, we have a lot of census, and that was the whole purpose, is they needed to control the population. So they were very aware of where the indigenous people were, what their interactions were, how they were helping each other, and they did it so that they could dismantle that protection that they were getting from each other. And they also took advantage of the fact that a lot of them didn't like each other. These were all separate indigenous nations, and they were enemies. So the Spanish took advantage of that very, very much. They took advantage of all of that political turmoil that was going on when they arrived. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. So it's interesting, again, I just hope to continue to share the knowledge that I'm learning, because I'm presenting the knowledge to you, but I'm learning as I'm presenting to you. So I'm learning it, making sure I get all the details right, and then I'm presenting it to you guys so that you can also learn what I'm learning, you know. But it is really, really, really interesting, and I'm enjoying it so much, because my mind has been blown, really, with all of it, because there's so much that I didn't know. Hi, Española. How are you? You're doing a great job. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. You too. You have great content as well. Thank you. And I think I'm taking a little bit of a different approach and just concentrating right now on the Tainos. And again, it's just I'm I'm just amazed at everything I've found. And I think that's why I've decided to just take my time, like dissecting all the different Tainos that we know about, getting their stories right. But I also feel that it's really, really important to kind of get the information from as close to their time as possible. So I've had a couple of people message me and they're like, "Oh, so why don't you talk about this historian, or why don't you include this other historian in your sources?" And I'm like, I don't want to include people that never even saw the primary sources, that they're just speculating, they're just trying to make sense of the history, but they're making sense of the history within like the realm of their time. They didn't have access to El Archivo General de las Indias. They didn't have access to any of the primary sources. So I don't want to use them, and I know that some people don't like that, and I'm sorry, but I'm gonna try to use the sources as close as possible to the actual time period that they lived in. And unfortunately, and this is another criticism I get, oh, but the sources that we have closest to them are European. Yes, they are. I have to work with what I get, what I have. You know, I can't work with anything else. So, even though people don't like it, that's what I'm gonna be using. Most of the priest journals had access. Most of the priest journals had access. What do you mean? Which priest? Do you mean like Bartolome de las Casas and things like that? Yeah, those are the sources that, if you mean them, those are the sources I'm using. Again, the people that were there. I want to read and analyze the people that were actually there, that were actually present when the Tainos were going through what they were going through, when they were in the middle of that conquest, you know. The other historians don't really go deep enough about. Yeah, and that's another thing too. Like they're very superficial in their, how do I say, in their analysis. They're just like, yeah, and there were the Tainos. Yeah, they don't say anything else. But I also feel like, because this myth that they were eradicated so quickly that we know nothing about them, I think that has added to the idea that we don't have information. People, I've been doing Taino videos for over a year now. That's how much information we have, and I'm still not done. I'm still not done. Can you imagine? Like, even like I did a whole hour about Anacaona, a whole hour, and we don't have information. Like I didn't even include everything about her. Like I kind of wanted to do her daughter and granddaughter separately, so I took out that whole chunk about what she went through when her daughter was, basically being used as a freaking pawn because these men wanted her and it was a mess. I didn't even include that in the episode. And it's gonna be minimum, I think, maybe like an extra 15-20 minutes, because we don't have a lot about them, but we have something. So it's like, where did these people get the idea that we didn't have any info? It's like, now I'm drowning in info. Now I'm drowning in info. It's like so much. It's crazy. They became Catholics. Most of the Tainos just switched with their name. Yes, that's exactly what happened. Most of them just became Catholics. And that was something I was sharing a couple of lives ago, how they actually took Spanish names. So a lot of our Dominican names are actually indigenous because, for example, we have Isabel Rodriguez. She was the only Rodriguez, only indigenous person to take the name Rodriguez. So somewhere along the line, someone is descendant of her and her people, right? We have Velasquez. We have all these other names. There's a whole list. I shared it last time. And so people don't know that though. They just assume, oh, they just all died. No, they became Spanish. Like that's what happened. Enriquillo Enriquez. So, it's been wonderful. Like I've absolutely have absolutely loved learning all of the stuff I've been learning. And I'm gonna still continue to learn because I haven't done Enriquillo yet, for example. And I'm really excited about doing Enriquillo. Because there have been so many, like, I've heard so many things about it, but I have never like really sat down to like dissect Enriquillo's story. And so I'm really excited about that because I did that for Anacaona. I sat down. It took me just to prep. Look, where's my look? Just to prep for this video. Look. I like using just this side because it's easier. It's still going. This. Because I had this and it keeps going. I think, how many pages is that? It keeps going. I think it's, let's see. Yeah. How many pages was that? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.5 pages of just prep work here to get it like chronological. On my docs, where I actually have the detailed information, it was over 15 pages of info. 15 pages. So imagine Enriquillo. Imagine how many pages is Enriquillo. But because Ana Kaona also too, the reason it was so long was because she was from the the 1496, más o menos, around there. Well, it was a little bit before that. Like the 1490s all the way to 1503. So that's 13 years. 1503, 1504, 13, 14 years of life. So that's a long time. And then Enriquillo is going to be worse because Enriquillo is from, we know 100% because I have him in the book. I have him in the census. Those who have been on my live know my book. Even in religious mythology, Jajael is Yahweh, right? Um, the famous book that has the census, the 1514 census, right? I can't show it too much because copyright and whatnot, but he's in here. Enriquillo's in here. And this is 1514, right? 1514. I have to confirm the time, like the time slot. But supposedly his rebellion started in 1519. So 5 years after this census, right? But he doesn't go to La Audiencia Real, which is the court, the first European court in the Americas, which was in Santo Domingo. He didn't go to La Audiencia Real until 1533. 1533, count that. That was 13 years later after he supposedly started rebelling. And then his rebellion didn't end until about 1540. So that's another 7 years. So that's a long time. that's it's gonna be like at least 20 years, más o menos. So it's gonna take me a while to get Enriquillo out because I look at all the sources. I look at Oviedo. I look at Bartolomé de las Casas, Pedro Martí de Angleria. I'm using the ones who were there. I'm not gonna be using the historians who later like commented and whatever. Great for them, but I'm not gonna be using them. So this is the book. I can't show the cover because of copyright, but Repartimientos y encomiendas en la isla española, el repartimiento de Albuquerque de 1514. This is the golden book of, I can't show too much of it, I'm sorry, of Dominican research. So most of the stuff that you read is based off of this book. This is La Fundación. This I can show. Fundación García Arevalo. Thanks for sharing. I gotta get that book. Hun, this book, it was so hard to get this book. It was so hard for me to get this book. You guys remember what I was telling you? The OGs? You remember? David and Anna? This book was hard to get. Like, I had tried to order it. So you can order it through your library. I tried to order it through my college that I went to because I'm an alumni, so I have access to the library, right? And when you still can't find it, when I looked up to get this book, right? I asked my institution, and so I ordered it. When I go to supposedly pick it up, a bunch of people came out, and they're like, "Why do you want this book? What are you doing with this book? What what are you researching?" And I'm like, the hell? why why is this book a big deal? And they're like, oh no, we can't let you take it out because I was doing my graduate work, like I was doing my master's, and I was like, no, I'm pausing this semester, but I'm still a student here. And they're like, nope. Mm-mm. And mind you, like one person came out, another person came out, another person. I was like, what the hell's going on? It was the weirdest thing. I've never seen somebody like, I've never seen people react that way about a book. But later on, I found out that this book apparently had been out of print for a long time, and then all of a sudden, like, books started to pop up. And then Married the Pirate's Daughter for the Rite of Passage, an Indigenous woman. Who was that? Who married the pirate's daughter? Um, so back to the book. I ended up searching and searching and searching for the book, and I found a couple of copies. One copy was, I think it was, at that time, it wasn't very expensive. It was like 40 whatever bucks. But then when I went back to look for the book after I couldn't get it from my institution, all of a sudden this book was $80. 60 between 60 and $80. And I'm like, the hell, why is this what is going on? But I talked to my brother and I was like, I really want this book. It's the basis of like the research. Like this, we had stopped reading it, right? We were supposed to read it. And I just got sidetracked. But all of this book is from el Archivo General de las Indias. These are the direct documents. Okay. Primary documents. Like these are the documents written by the Spanish at that time. So this only little bit here is the commentary from the author. The rest is all primary sources. So I told my brother, oh, I want the blah, blah, blah. I ordered it from Spain. It came from Spain. And then when I had a friend who was like, oh, can you get me a copy of this book? I really want it. I was like, okay. I tried to find another copy. It was $2,000. 2,000? What? I couldn't believe it. And now you can't find another copy. I got it like right before all hell broke loose. And yeah, so this is like the golden book of Dominican research. Like I can read it and stuff, but I can't I can't show too much of it because apparently they're getting people in trouble or whatever. So I'm trying to be cautious about it. But we did read some of it the other time. We read the law that was passed giving permission to indigenous women to marry Spanish men. That was really, really important to start establishing those families. So that was really, really important. And then I looked through it for different things, but I haven't read it too much because since I was doing Ana Kauna, and now I'm going to be doing her daughter, Atue and Igwe. This is more of like right during the beginning of Enriquillo's time. So I kind of wanted to wait to read it because I wanted it to be fresh in my mind. So that's why I haven't really read it too much because of that, because it goes all the way up to, let me see what's the last document on here. It goes up to 1517. So not many years, but these years were critical because it established really the basis of the colony of Santo Domingo and how it affected the rest of Latin America. So from here, it affected Mexico, Guatemala, Salvador, Honduras, Venezuela, Colombia, all of those countries were affected by what happened in these years. So I kind of wanted to wait and read it when I was doing this time frame because a lot of stuff happened in this very short amount of time. So yeah, that's why I wanted to wait. I haven't read it as much because I'm waiting for that. But I've been using the census, which is in the back. So here's the census of all of the indigenous people, los caciques, that were on the island. So that's been really, really interesting. That I've looked at so much because it was super, super interesting. So this other one is the one that I used mainly for my Taino research. So Tainos en Caribs by Sebastián Rubio Lamarche. So this is what I started reading in order to learn a little bit, like not a little bit, but learn about Taino culture and religion. So it has all of my notes in it and stuff. You can see where I scribbled everywhere. It's really good. It's a really good read. I'm gonna show it on this side. It's a really, really good read. Um, the only thing is that I felt that the way he wrote it was really more for people who were already in that world, like already doing the research, because I had to go back a couple of times because I had never really looked into the Tainos for some reason. Hi Tina, how are you? Hola, ¿cómo estás? All right, you guys. I have to log off, but se me cuidan mucho, los quiero mucho, Jehová me los cuide y vamos a hablar la próxima semana, ¿ok? Bye.